Hey everyone, and welcome back. You're listening to The Deep Dive.
I'm excited for this one.
So today we're taking a deep dive into a book that's basically a rock star in the self-help world.
Oh, yeah, I know this one.
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
A classic.
Now I know what you might be thinking, another self-help book. But hold on, trust me on this one.
Yeah, this isn't your typical self-help fluff.
This book by Stephen Covey, it's sold like a gazillion copies. And there's a reason it goes way beyond those like quick fix tips you usually see.
It's the real deal. This book, it's not about putting a Band-Aid on things. It's about making some serious changes in your thinking.
Okay, so no magic solutions, just real change.
Real lasting change that can seriously impact your life.
All right, you've got my attention. So where do we even start with something as big as like transforming my entire life?
Well, Covey starts with this idea he calls a paradigm shift.
Paradigm shift.
Yeah, basically he wants us to take a step back and really examine all those assumptions we have about success, about how we see the world, even about ourselves.
Okay, that's a pretty big ask. So what does paradigm shift actually mean, like in normal people speak?
It's about changing your perspective. You see, a lot of us, we get caught up in what Covey calls the personality ethic. This idea that success is all about how you look, your skills, the techniques you have.
So it's like focusing on the outside stuff.
Exactly. But Covey's saying that's not where real lasting success comes from. He says it starts from within. It's about the character ethic.
Character ethics, so like being a good person.
It's more than that. It's about making sure your actions match up with your core principles, like
Yes.
integrity, honesty, fairness, the things your parents hopefully taught you.
Right.
It's about who you are even when nobody's watching and how that foundation you've built influences everything else you do.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like building a house on solid ground instead of on a shaky foundation.
Exactly.
So how do we actually start building that strong foundation? Is that where the 7 habits come in?
That's it. Each habit is like a building block, and they all work together to create something amazing.
Okay, so like a step-by-step guide.
And the first one, habit 1, be proactive. That's where it all begins.
Okay, be proactive.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I hear that everywhere these days.
Mm.
Isn't that just a fancy way of saying take initiative?
It's more than that, Covey says. It's about understanding the difference between your circle of influence and your circle of concern.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm following.
Your circle of concern is all that stuff that stresses you out, right? Like everything from climate change to that weird noise your car's been making.
Oh yeah, I have a whole lot of that going on.
We all do.
Yeah.
But your circle of influence, that's much smaller. It's the stuff you can actually control. Your actions, your words, your attitude.
So instead of stressing about things I can't change, I should focus on what I can actually do something about.
Exactly. It's about putting your energy into making a difference where you can.
Okay, that's actually pretty empowering.
It is.
It reminds me of this article we read from the HubSpot blog. The writer was freaking out about AI replacing them, which, is a valid concern these days.
Right. It's on everyone's minds.
And instead of panicking, they took a step back and focused on their circle of influence. They worked on their unique voice, their storytelling abilities, all the things AI can't do.
Exactly.
And guess what? They ended up landing even better clients because of it.
It's amazing what happens when you focus on what you can control.
Okay, so we're being proactive. We're focusing on what we can control. What's next on this journey to becoming super effective?
Habit 2, begin with the end in mind.
Okay, begin with the end in mind. I have to be honest, that sounds a little morbid. Does it involve writing a will?
Not quite, though that's not a bad idea either.
Right, I've been meaning to get around to that.
Covey uses this really powerful image of imagining your own funeral.
Okay.
What would you want people to say about you?
Wow.
And this isn't about ego or anything. It's about figuring out your core values, what you want your life to represent.
So it's like defining your own legacy, but you're doing it for yourself, not waiting for someone else to do it after you're gone.
Exactly. It's about writing your own eulogy, so to speak. It's about getting clear on your personal mission statement. What kind of impact do you want to have on the world? What kind of person do you want to be?
That actually makes so much sense. It's like that saying, what's your why? If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Exactly. And Covey would say that once you've figured out your destination, your end, then habit 3 helps you figure out the best way to get there.
Habit 3. Put first things first. Is this the time management one? Because that's something I think we can all relate to.
Time management is a big part of it, but it's also about priority management.
Okay, so it's not just about managing time. It's about managing what we do with that time.
Exactly. And Covey has this famous time management matrix that's really helpful for visualizing this.
Okay, I'm a visual learner, so break it down for me.
He divides our time into 4 quadrants based on whether something is urgent or important.
Okay, go on.
So quadrant I is both urgent and important. These are the crises,
Yeah.
deadlines we can't ignore. Quadrant third is urgent but not important. These are all the interruptions, the distractions that pull us away from what really matters.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I live in quadrant 3. It's those endless notifications, those urgent requests that could have totally been an email.
Most of us do. And that's why it's so hard to find time for quadrant 2. Important but not urgent.
Okay, quadrant 2, what's that all about?
This is where you find things like long-term planning relationship, building personal development, the things that really move the needle in our lives.
Okay, I would see how that often gets pushed aside.
It does, but it shouldn't.
So were you saying we should just ignore all the urgent stuff and become hermits who meditate in quadrant 2 all day long?
Not exactly. It's all about finding a balance. Covey argues that the key to being effective is to make time for those quadrant 2 activities.
Even if it means saying no sometimes.
Even if it means saying no sometimes. It's about being proactive with your schedule and making sure those important but not urgent tasks get the attention they deserve.
Wow, okay, this is starting to feel very real.
Hmm.
I need to take some notes.
That's great. It's all about applying these principles to our own lives. And that's something we'll explore even further with the remaining habits.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork with those first 3 habits. They're like our foundation for personal effectiveness.
Exactly.
But what about navigating the rest of the world? Like our relationships, our work, all those interactions that can sometimes feel kind of chaotic.
That's where the next 3 habits come in. Covey calls this the realm of public victory.
Public victory, okay.
Yeah, because being truly effective isn't just about you as an individual. It's about how you connect with and influence others.
And I bet that's where it gets really tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because we can't exactly control how other people act.
Exactly. These habits require a whole different level of self-awareness and emotional intelligence.
Okay.
But they're also incredibly rewarding because they lead to deeper, more authentic connections with the people around us.
All right, I'm ready for the challenge. Hit me with habit 4.
Habit 4, think win-win.
Think win-win. You know, that one always makes me think of those cheesy corporate motivational posters.
I know what you mean. It's easy to think of it as just being nice or always compromising, but it goes so much deeper than that.
So what's the real deal with win-win?
It's about approaching every interaction with this belief that there's a solution out there that works for everyone involved.
So it's not about one person winning and the other losing. It's about both people feeling good about the outcome.
Exactly. It's about collaboration, not competition. Covey talks about this difference between a scarcity mentality and an abundance mentality.
Okay, explain that to me.
So scarcity sees the world as this zero-sum game. Like, if you get more, I automatically get less.
Right.
But abundance, on the other hand, believes there's enough to go around for everyone.
Okay, I like the sound of abundance better already.
Me too.
And I can see how this ties back to that whole paradigm shift we talked about earlier. It's a completely different way of looking at the world.
It really is. It requires us to shift from that me versus you mindset to a we mindset.
We're in this together.
Yeah.
You know, this reminds me of that freelancer example from the HubSpot blog. They wanted to raise their rates, but they were so worried about losing clients.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. What did they do?
Well, instead of approaching it with that scarcity mindset,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like if I charge more, they'll just go somewhere cheaper.
Right.
They focused on finding a win-win.
I like it.
They focused on the value they were providing. They communicated really clearly with their clients, and they found a way to make it work for everyone.
And it worked out.
It did. They ended up with happier, more engaged clients in the long run.
That's awesome. Proof that win-win really works.
Okay, so we're thinking win-win. What's next?
Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Okay, that sounds intense.
This one's huge, maybe even the most challenging habit of them all.
Really?
Yeah.
More than the paradigm shift stuff.
It's up there. Because we all like to think of ourselves as good listeners, right?
Sure.
But how often are we really, truly listening to understand versus just waiting for our turn to talk?
Oh, man. Busted. You're totally right.
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
It's like we're already formulating our response before the other person's even finished speaking.
Exactly. We listen with the intent to reply, not with the intent to truly empathize.
So how do we break that habit?
Covey talks about this thing he calls empathic listening.
Okay.
It's about stepping outside of your own head and really trying to see the world through the other person's eyes.
Easier said than done right. Especially when you're in the middle of a disagreement or a heated conversation.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of conscious effort to quiet your own inner monologue and really focus on what the other person is saying and feeling.
So it's like active listening on steroids.
You could say that Covey gives some really practical tools for developing this habit, though. One of them is what he calls reflective listening.
Reflective listening.
Basically, you repeat back what you've heard in your own words to make sure you've understood correctly.
Oh, that's a good idea. That would solve so many communication breakdowns.
It really would. It not only helps avoid misunderstandings, but it also shows the other person that you're really listening, that you care about what they have to say.
It's like you're validating their thoughts and feelings just by reflecting them back.
Exactly. And when people feel heard and understood, they're much more likely to be open to your perspective as well.
It builds trust.
Exactly. It creates a foundation for real dialogue and connection.
Which brings us to habit 6, synergize.
Habit 6. Synergize, one of my favorites.
Isn't that just a fancy word for teamwork?
It's teamwork, but it's more than that. It's recognizing that everyone brings something different to the table. We all have unique strengths, different perspectives.
Right.
And when we come together with openness and collaboration, we can achieve so much more than we ever could on our own.
It's like that saying, 2 heads are better than 1.
Exactly. But it's not just about having more people in the room. It's about valuing those differences, those unique perspectives that each person brings.
Okay, so it's about respecting and leveraging our differences, not just trying to all be the same.
Exactly. Covey uses this example of a choir. Each individual voice might be beautiful on its own,
Right.
but when all those voices come together in harmony, it creates something truly magical.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the first 6 habits, from taking responsibility for our own lives to building strong, synergistic relationships.
We've covered a lot.
That's a lot to process.
Uh-huh.
What's the final piece of the puzzle? So we've covered so much ground here, from being proactive to seeking synergy. It's like these habits, they all build on each other, you know?
I do. It's this amazing upward spiral of effectiveness.
Exactly. So what's the final habit, the one that brings it all together?
Habit 7, sharpen the saw.
Okay. I have to admit, this one always seems a little vague to me. What does it even mean to sharpen the saw? Am I supposed to, like, take up woodworking now?
Unless you want to, no. It's a metaphor. Covey uses it for self-renewal.
Self-renewal.
Yeah, think about it. You're chopping down a tree, right? And you just keep sawing and sawing and sawing without ever stopping to sharpen your saw.
Okay.
What's going to happen?
You're going to be exhausted. And it's going to take forever.
Exactly. You'll wear yourself out and you won't be nearly as effective.
Okay, that makes sense. So sharpening the saw is about taking care of ourselves so we can actually show up as our best selves.
Exactly. Covey talks about these 4 dimensions of renewal: physical, mental, spiritual, and social emotional.
Okay, so it's about taking care of our bodies, our minds, our spirits, and our relationships.
It's about the whole package. It's about making sure we're firing on all cylinders.
It's interesting because we often think of self-care as this, like, luxury, you know, something we do if we have time left over after everything else.
Right, like it's selfish or something.
But Covey's saying it's essential for being effective.
It is. You can't pour from an empty cup.
So true.
When we neglect our own well-being, we end up running on fumes. We're more stressed, less productive, and our relationships suffer.
Yeah, you definitely feel it when you're running on empty.
But when we prioritize sharpening the saw, we have more energy, more focus, we're more resilient when things get tough.
We can handle whatever life throws our way.
Right.
You know, this really resonates with me. Because I know when I'm feeling burned out, even the smallest tasks feel impossible.
Tell me about it.
But if I make time for things like yoga or getting out in nature or even just reading a good book for a little while,
Yeah, those things make a difference.
they make a huge difference. It's like hitting the reset button for my brain.
I love that. And it's so personal too, right? What works for you might not work for me.
Totally.
The important thing is to find those things that nourish you, that help you feel more alive and engaged, and then you have to make them a priority.
Make them non-negotiable.
Exactly. It's about making a commitment to yourself, just like you would to any other important priority in your life.
It's about putting yourself on the to-do list.
And here's the beautiful thing. When you prioritize sharpening your own saw, it doesn't just benefit you, it benefits everyone around you.
Oh, absolutely. You show up as a better parent, a better partner, a better friend, a better colleague.
It's that ripple effect we were talking about. It all starts with you, but it doesn't end there.
Wow, that's a powerful thought. So to sum it all up,
Stephen Covey's 7 habits, they give us this amazing framework for living a more effective, fulfilling, and meaningful life.
it's a roadmap to being our best selves.
But we have to remember, it's not enough to just read the book or listen to this deep dive. We have to actually put these principles into practice.
We have to do the work.
Exactly.
We have to find those small daily actions that move us closer to the people we want to be and the impact we want to have on the world.
Well said.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this question. What's one small step you can take today to sharpen your saw? It doesn't have to be anything huge. It could be something as simple as taking a walk outside or reading a few pages of a good book or calling a friend you haven't talked to in a while.
Those little things can make a big difference.
They really can. Remember, small changes consistently applied can lead to extraordinary results.
Absolutely.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the 7 habits of highly effective people. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time, keep diving deep.